I'd just like to introduce Christopher Turner from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, who's going to talk about investigating food environments using a novel qualitative GIS approach.
So there are four main food sources in the food environment. They include market-based food sources, own production, wild food harvesting, and also transfers. And food environment research has been developed in high-income countries in response to the prevalence of overweight and obesity, perhaps in food environments that look something a bit like this. But increasingly, food environment research and policy has been calling for food environment research in low and middle-income countries. And as we know, there's a nutrition transition ongoing. We have the double burden of malnutrition and also rapidly evolving dynamic and diverse food environments. So we need to better understand food acquisition and consumption practices as part of daily life. And those of you that were in the Drivers of Food Choice session earlier in this week, you'll know that we discussed some of these issues at length. So as I said, as part of my PhD research, I've been developing a qualitative GIS approach. And this includes geotagged participatory photography and also follow-up in-depth graphic elicitation interviews. So I had 24 participants from 2 villages outside of Hyderabad in India, and they photographed their food environment over a 3-day period using a Samsung J2 smartphone. These photographs were then downloaded and mapped. The participants chose their favorite photographs, and these were then printed out and taken back to follow-up interviews. And the maps and the photographs were used to elicit narratives about food environment interactions from an emic perspective. So here we have some of the guiding information that we provided on the background screen and on the screensaver of the phones. So our guiding question was, how does food fit into your daily life and activities? And we encouraged the participants to take pictures of buying, growing, preparing, cooking, and also eating food, as well as food sources, but also non-food items, objects, or activities that they thought were particularly important in shaping the foods that they eat. We encourage the participants to have fun and also to take as many pictures as they liked, and we emphasized that there were no right or wrong pictures. So here we have an example of one of the charts that we took back to the interviews. As you can see, the map there is in the center, surrounded by the photographs, and the map contains the GPS points where the photographs were taken, and they're numbered, and each photograph corresponds to those numbers. And here we have an example of one of the photographs just to show you that even relatively cheap smartphones, such as the Samsung J2, is capable of capturing detailed photographs in quite difficult conditions with high levels of contrast. And these phones cost around £100, so it's almost the cheapest smartphone available that has the camera application and also the GPS option. So in terms of the graphic elicitation interviews, we had a topic guide that focused on food environment interactions, perceptions of the food environment, gendered food acquisition with the household because we had men and women from the same household, and also acceptability and feasibility of the mobile phone and the camera usage. We also included photo probes, so each photograph had a specific question to try and get a bit more in depth. So in terms of results, in total, participants took over 1,000 photographs, average of around 43 per person, and 267 of them were chosen as favorites, and these are the ones that were mapped, printed, and coded. So that was about 11 per person, as you saw previously in that example. And 87% of the photographs were successfully geocoded with GPS. In terms of food sources, more than 55% of all the photographs that were mapped included some kind of food source. And as you can see here, own production and informal market-based vendors were among the most commonly photographed vendors, suggesting that these are particularly important in this sort of peri-urban setting. And this is particularly interesting because often these are types of food sources which would be missed in more standardized food environment surveys because we tend to go to more formal-based market vendors, and these sources are often missed. And participants documented the food environment throughout the diurnal cycle, and thereby reflecting the intricate spatio-temporal realities of food acquisition. And we know that people acquire food throughout the daily cycle, but we often can't capture, for example, in the evenings or in the early morning. And this is a great way of getting more in-depth information and a sort of more complete information about the different types of food sources that people interact with. So some results from the coding. With regard to the external food environment, we're able to capture availability, vendor product properties, and marketing and regulation. Prices was a little bit more tricky. And in terms of the personal food environment, we did capture some accessibility, but the other dimensions such as affordability, desirability, and convenience weren't picked up, perhaps unsurprisingly, by the photographs, although we were able to pick these up in the follow-up interviews using the topic guides and the probes. So in terms of emerging themes, I've just started analysing the transcripts. So it seems that participants in this setting have a diverse food acquisition strategies that includes market and non-market-based food sources. The role of social contracts, credit, and the informal economy seems to be particularly important. That's something that's often not picked up in the food environment literature. The sense of community and trust in the local vendors also seems to be a key emerging theme, as well as gendered food acquisition practices. And these are some of the things that I'm going to be investigating further as I go a bit deeper into the analysis. So participants reported no hindrance to the daily activities. Regular support visits during the data collection were found to be highly valued by the participants. And so in conclusion, Q-GIS was able to elicit situated knowledge and understanding about food environment interactions, and it was also capable of capturing food acquisition from a range of sources throughout the daily cycle. And participatory photography engaged the participants, allowing them to tell their stories and narratives through the photographs. Thank you very much.